Hello, good afternoon everybody. Welcome to another Art for All group with St Christopher's Hospice. My name is Lucy and I'm going to be facilitating the group today. Normally we have a group in the Anniversary Centre that's open to patients, volunteers, staff and community members, so anybody who wants to join can come to an art group. Normally starts at 2 every Tuesday in St Christopher's Hospice. So in the future, when we reopen again, and there'll be news on that in the coming weeks and months, it will be lovely to see anybody who wants to attend. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about art using circles and kind of, I suppose, what it brought up in my mind, and an art activity you can do at home which actually looks I suppose quite pleasing to the eye, and eyes come into this as well. So what I'm going to do is I have a PowerPoint and I'm going to share my screen so that you can see what I'm seeing as well. So I'll do that just now. I'll do that. Okay, here we are. Make that full screen. So here we go. Some of you might have seen this piece of artwork. It's from the very early 20th century and it's by Kandinsky, and got all these glowing colours, these concentric circles. What you might not know is that actually this was never intended to be shown in a gallery or to be seen by anybody else, even though it's now one of Kandinsky, Russian sort of I guess would he be post-impressionist artist. It's actually colour studies, so he's here experimenting with different ways he can combine colours in his paintings, and this went on to inspire other artists to make their own, to use concentric circles and to use kind of different forms, and forms that would normally just be seen on decorative tiles and decorations actually in paintings and in kind of artwork that would normally be more figurative. This kind of allowed this process to start happening. So it's the very beginnings of abstract art. And what I thought it might be good to do today, or what we could do today, is actually we could make our own version of this. So I've already started. So I'll show you here, and so you can see mine's a bit different from his. I've got different colours and I've got different kind of brush styles, but I will show you how to make your own version of this in just a moment. But I'm also going to talk to you about different artists whose work is actually similar to this, and also how this relates to folk art actually around the world. And looking at this picture of Kandinsky has actually sparked off for me different ideas of different artists. So the first artist I'm going to talk about is Lubna Chowdhury, and Lubna Chowdhury was born in Tanzania, but then came over to the UK to study art in 1970, and she studied at Manchester University and then got a master's in ceramics from the Royal College of Art in London, and since then has been working on many different projects, but she's very famous for her use of colour and also for her use of circular forms and using these on tiles, so these really beautiful, so she might do a series in green or a series in red, so we have this kind of this decorative aspect that we talked about a bit with Kandinsky, where it's kind of, oh, these are things to decorate the home, whereas on the right here, these are to be put in a gallery, and they're kind of meant to be like cityscapes. So you can almost see like the Heron Tower in London or the Shard here, and these kind of futuristic, imaginative cityscapes. So actually, we go from the very domestic things that you could have potentially on your kitchen wall, and they're actually quite 60s as well. So you have the Kandinsky work, which is very early 20th century. You have these 60s, 70s inspired tiles, but then it moves on, sort of elevating the ceramic form into things that can go into a gallery, and things that, and using kind of flat relief work in a way that is 3D and quite sculptural, so stacking of things. So it actually moves pottery on quite a lot. And I think often when we think of British pottery, we think of Bernard Leach, and some of you might be aware of his work. Very, very brown, very kind of sort of rough textured, lots of jugs, lots of things stuck on plinths. So these things are seen on plinths, and they are sort of almost classical in a way, kind of going back to amphoras in ancient Greek usage. Actually, we'll come on to the ancient Greeks in a minute. Whereas this work is, I suppose, much more playful, but also not playful in a way that could be seen as childish, but it's playful and imaginative, and it kind of works with scale and with colour as well. And yeah, I think just this use of colour and the use of the concentric circles, it almost feels like there's something dropping into a pool and then the ripples going out, but they're really controlled ripples. And looking at Lubna Chowdhury's work reminded me, finally, this is the final thing I'll talk about before we go on to the art activity, reminded me of nazars or mati. So they might be known as nazars in Turkey and around the Middle East and some parts of North Africa. In Greece they would be known as mati. We can also see an example of a luzo, which is a Maltese boat. So nazar or mati are charms to ward off the evil eye. This is a sculpture based on the idea in the Netherlands. This is a Turkish aeroplane which has a nazar on it. These are charms which, if you've ever been on holiday to Greece or to Turkey, you will have seen these charms everywhere. So they are to protect from the evil eye. So if somebody looks at you in an envious or sort of a way that wishes you harm, if you have one of these, you are protected from it. And in Malta and also in Greece as well, the eyes used to be put on boats so that you would always be looking out, or these charms will be looking out so that you were protected. But they also really reminded me in their form of the Kandinsky concentric circles and of the work of Lubna Chowdhury, and this kind of this almost international language of the circle. And there are ideas about the evil eye or a bad gaze that you'll find them throughout the Mediterranean, into Tibet and China, in India. They can also, you might see a hand with an eye on, known as a hamza, and so you might see those in Israel, in Iran or Iraq, also in India as well. I think maybe Hamza Batu is maybe the name. But you might also hear about the evil eye in South America, so in Latin America, but also Central America, and in Latin America, particularly Brazil. There's also a concept of it in the Caribbean. You don't hear a huge amount about the evil eye in sub-Saharan Africa, and possibly in Australia as well, but don't quote me on that. But you also hear accounts of the evil eye in places like Northern Europe and particularly in Scotland. So this concept of kind of putting eyes on things, seeing things but almost before they see you, this power of kind of seeing and being seen, and something about the circles seems to be this international language that actually it can be, there's the scary idea of having the evil eye upon you, but also it manifests in these really beautiful ways, and being hung on trees, and actually things that start out as one thing but become something else. So we have the Kandinsky sketch that starts out as just a colour sketch but actually turns out to inform a lot of certainly Western art and actually Eastern art as well during the 20th century. So things that start out as one thing, and something that might start out as a very necessary decoration to ward off the evil eye, or a necessary charm to ward off the evil eye, becomes decoration that is eventually sold to tourists. So it's kind of the change of things and the way that things meld. And I suppose that makes me think, now I'm going to stop my screen share, makes me think a little bit of the change that comes in, here you go, you might be able to see this a bit better now. Yeah, the change that comes in making watercolour images and things blending into each other. So I'm going to now, got this, I'm going to do a little bit so that you can see what the process is that I've used. So I'm going to use a fairly wide brush, and all you need, what I've done here is getting my brush quite wet. I pre-divided the paper up into 8 squares. So I just use a pencil and a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, I didn't use a ruler, I used the side of a book. So if you don't have a ruler, that's no limitation on this at all. So do that. And what I've done there is you might be able to see, I've actually put the red on over the orange while it's still quite wet, so that allows it to bleed in and just gives like a more interesting texture. And then I'm going to add in some blue, and I'm going to put the blue in a wider ring around, because I think it's also to be mindful of some colours you might want to do when other colours have dried, because the way they blend in together, so an orange and blue blending together is likely to create a brown. So maybe if you put orange and red together, you might get kind of a nice reddy colour, but if you don't want a brown, it's good to think about what colours are opposite each other on the colour wheel. So orange and blue are opposite each other on the colour wheel, so if you mix them together, you will get brown. Red and green are opposite each other on the colour wheel. If you mix them together, you will get brown. Purple and yellow, you'll get brown. So if you choose colours that are next to each other on the colour wheel, they'll be able to blend together and create maybe quite a nice colour. But as with anything in art, if you add too many colours together, eventually you get brown or grey. So that's something to always remember in painting. And sometimes you might want a grey, which is absolutely fine. But yeah, so yeah, I'm going to add in some green, and actually the green is mixing with the orange quite nicely to create quite a nice effect. I'm quite enjoying that. So I'll hold it up in just a moment. And I'm leaving some white gaps as well. I'm not being particularly fussy about what that looks like. And I'm going to add in some purple and some blue to create quite a nice ultraviolet. Just violet. Ooh, and that's turned out not quite as bright as I expected it to, so I might go back in. There. So, got that. But it's not, that purple is not quite what I expected it to be, so I might go back and actually put the purple a bit further towards the centre so that it stands out a bit. And I might go in with a slightly thinner line. Yeah, actually I like that. And it's all about experimenting, seeing what works well. So yeah, now I've got that. So yeah, that's all done. And as proof to show what happens when you mix lots of different colours together, yeah, so you mix all those colours together, it turns out brown. So yeah, I'll hold this up just so that you can see. It might drip a little bit, but the drip is part of what makes it look nice. I'll hold it up to the camera. Yeah, so something you can very easily do on your own. And also if you're trying to do it, so you can see now it's dribbled a little bit, and actually I quite like that drip. I think it's quite kind of makes it more interesting, and you have more interesting colours there. What you can do is, if you're having difficulty painting the circles, because we have people joining the group who have many different ways of holding brushes, many different strengths in their hands, what you can also do is do this with kitchen paper and actually just mix up the paints and then drop the paints, put the brush on the paper, and it will bloom out, and then do that again and again in the same spot, and it will get sort of wider and wider and wider, and you can do that multiple times and create your own squares that way. And just the way you might need to use multiple sheets of kitchen paper, but just it will bloom out and you will have those circles as well. Or what you can alternatively do is paint a circle of water on and then just drop paint, liquid watercolour, or using a watercolour palette, or actually even felt tips. Just put that on and let the water take it out so that you don't actually have to move the brush. So I hope this has been interesting, and I hope it's been helpful. I'd love to see any artwork that you make inspired by Kandinsky, or indeed Libn Chowdhury, or your own Nazars or Mati. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. All the best.